Our sermon theme today is something's coming. Something's coming. And for all practical purposes, given the fact that this is the first week of Advent, we know what's on the horizon. And we tend to turn our attention to the birth of Jesus. We embrace the inn that has no vacancy, the cradle full of scratchy hay, a smelly old barn complete with star-struck animals and shepherds. Shepherds who just walked away from their job at a moment's notice with only a vibrant star as their GPS. And then there's the waiting. The waiting, and the expectations that come with the waiting, and the anxiety that often comes with the expectations. Yes, something is coming. Something must be coming if we're waiting. In our reading today from Jeremiah and in the Gospel of Luke, we are once again confronted with these wonderful apocalyptic writings. Oh, joy. But just to clarify, this does not mean the end is near. No. In actuality, apocalyptic literature brings us to a place of renewal, of hope for better days, opportunities for a fresh start, and a promise that God is in the mix of it all. God is always in the process of creating things new out of confusion and chaos. In Jeremiah's text today, the prophetic words of discourse to the people were ensconced with the hope that God is in the process of creating a future of hope for all people. Even the people of Israel, house of Judah, and Jerusalem, whose kings and the political climate and daily life had little to do with righteousness. It had little to do with their righteous God. The images of life after disaster, as one biblical commentator put it, are not overblown with glitter and diamonds and champagne. Instead, Jeremiah casts a scene of normal, everyday life. In the midst of chaos, memories of the regular rhythms of life take on new significance and beauty. Oh boy, out of the mess, out of the chaos, Jeremiah claims something new is coming. I don't know about you, but I long for the days when regular rhythms return to our lives. We are anything but in the regular rhythm of life. But being part of a community that has its share of pain and death, I think we can all relate to the significance of some sort of consistency, this new rhythm of normalcy, whatever that will look like. But I surmise, I have a hunch that waiting for the sounds of war, the scenes of death, and injustice to change in the days that were surely coming did not come fast enough. And as we know, we're not the end to all the messiness of life. The trials and tragedies and a faltering faith in the midst of chaos are still with us today. Good news for the first week in Advent. The mini apocalypse from the writer of Luke's gospel today was well aware of how changes in our circumstances create a sense of doom and doubt within us. And anxiety while we are waiting for things to change. A spot is found on an ultrasound. There is tension between nations and neighborhoods. There are broken marriages, a DUI, a virus that keeps manifesting itself, and overrun hospitals and heart attacks and kidney disease and surgeries on hold and political systems that continue to utter harsh rhetoric. And schools find themselves in limbo almost every single week. And the list goes on and on. Paul Tillich calls it the shaking of our foundations. And truthfully, the first week of Advent does not necessarily paint a rosy picture. But apocalyptic literature is not suggestive of some future event, but the present one. Hope, therefore, is in the midst of chaos and what indeed ushers us in to Advent. Hope that is grounded in the belief that the uncertainties of life, and we all have them, will not end at a specified time or place or with a specified event. What if the apocalyptic messages of the prophet Jeremiah and the writer of the Gospel of Luke are more about reminding us that the days which are surely coming are, in fact, already here? And that's not to say justice and righteousness or right living reign supreme today, because we know they don't. And it's not to say there's no distress with the nations and chaos and creation and upheaval in the governments, senseless loss of life and an ebb and flow of anxiety, or living in a season where stress of what to buy the person you don't like to impress the person you do like with the money you don't have. No, it's not to say that broken relationships and divorce, addiction, racism, and riots are not a part of life in the 21st century, because we are living proof they are not. Yes, something's coming, all right, but we are not to live like people with no hope. After reading the gospel lesson this week, I couldn't help but think about our reaction when we are told storms are coming. We button down the hatch, we board up the windows, incessantly watch the forecast, and wait it out until it's over. And that's not to say we shouldn't be safe in the physical storms and take heed of the weather. It is what we are supposed to do. But when it comes to our faith, when it comes to feeling like the world is falling apart at the seams, we are not only reminded of Jeremiah's prophecy of promise and hope, that God is always creating new out of the chaos. But Luke's gospel tells us it is time to stand up, to breathe deeply, and to pay attention to what God is up to. Living into the hope of tomorrow today eliminates the anxiety that comes from waiting and hoping and waiting and hoping. And I surmise if we lived into Advent with this in mind, we just might see that God is and always has been in the process of creating a future for us all that consists of justice and freedom and reconciliation and wholeness. And not just for us as individuals, but for all of creation. So, I wish I started the season today proclaiming the good news of great joy about the warmth and the wonder and the wishing for all that is bright and beautiful. But I'm not. And it's not. Transformative relationships and transformative times in our life come out of circumstances that are full of both joy and pain. And when we embrace the realization that we are a part of a much bigger story, and that story is part of a much bigger story that is always about the arrival of hope and peace and love and joy. Yes, something's coming. Something big is coming. But while we're in the midst of waiting, the good news is we get to wait together. Today, tomorrow, and throughout the days that we know, those days that are surely coming, we get to do it together. So welcome to the first week of Advent. Amen.